Thank you for joining us for this webinar, our next presentation in the Kentucky Creative Industry Summit Series, brought to you online this year due to working through a global pandemic. I'm happy to have with us today Lori Meadows, the president of the Kentuckians for the Arts and former executive director of the Kentucky Arts Council, and to talk with us about advocacy. And this is a very important issue for us going into a legislative session. It's also an important issue for us year round. But as we know right now that the arts are in an incredibly difficult shape and have been disproportionately affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Chris Cathers, who is going to get us started with a land acknowledgement. Please know that the chat and the Q&A will be open to take your questions, and we will have a question and answer session at the end of Lori's presentation.
All right, thank you, Emily. So a land acknowledgement is a formal statement that recognizes the unique and enduring relationship that exists between Indigenous peoples and their traditional territories. Here in Kentucky, today we stand on ground occupied by ancient peoples whose history has been lost, but whose legacy remains. The evidence of these ancient people can be seen all over Kentucky through the mounds and artifacts left behind. Today, over 170 American Indian tribes are represented by their members living and working in the Commonwealth. Let us honor those who are here and those who are here now and build on the legacy of stewardship of the land they left for us unto the 7th generation. Thank you, and Lori, take it away.
Okay, thanks, Chris. Thanks, Emily. I'm glad to join everybody today to talk about advocacy. First, a couple of words about Kentuckians for the Arts. Kentuckians for the Arts serves as the Commonwealth's arts advocacy organization, and it's a nonpartisan nonprofit that provides information and education about the impact and value of the arts, increases public awareness of the importance of the arts, and ensures that the arts are an ongoing part of the public dialogue. So what exactly is arts advocacy? Quite simply, advocacy is expressing support and speaking up for an idea, a policy, or a cause. Anyone can advocate, and if we believe in the value of public support for the arts, we should all be advocates. You can advocate for the arts by being informed, educating decision makers using reliable information and explaining the issues, building relationships and coalitions, utilizing media outreach and PR, and offering personal stories. When talking about advocacy, it's really critical to acknowledge and be aware of the current status of the arts sector. As Emily mentioned, the arts are in dire straits at the moment. We're all aware that nationally, every facet of the arts has suffered during 2020 as a result of COVID, and Kentucky's certainly no exception. Individual artists have lost their venues for selling, exhibiting, performing. Arts organizations have lost their ability to serve their audiences and patrons in the usual ways, and they've had significant downturn in donations in earned revenues. In venues, if they're able to be open at all, have had to limit their audiences and go to great expense to take the appropriate measure to ensure that staff, volunteer, and audiences are safe. Arts businesses and organizations have let employees go, and in some cases, they've closed permanently. We've all seen this happen. And diminished or canceled gig work by creative workers has also created huge hardships. And even educators, they're not able to offer arts education and arts and education programming and services in the traditional way, if they're even able to offer it at all. Johns Hopkins University Center for Civil Society Studies conducted an analysis of the economic damage to the nonprofit arts, culture, and recreation sector. And arts, culture, and recreation, because that is a segment of the creative industry. They discovered that between February and August of this year, jobs were down 34.7%, a job loss loss rate that is 3 times worse than other nonprofit subsectors. Excuse me, including education, which is down over 12%, social assistance over 10%, and healthcare almost 4.5%. Americans for the Arts has been collecting data on the pandemic's human and fiscal impact on the arts since mid-March, and they've been doing this by surveying both arts and cultural organizations and individual artists. And Eric, if you can show the slide, please. Thank you. Based on the data that they've collected from almost 20,000 nonprofit arts and cultural organizations, as of November 30th, the financial losses are an estimated $14.6 billion. You can see the figures here, but I'll run through them quickly. 99% of producing and presenting organizations have canceled events, and that's resulted in a loss of 481 million admissions and over $15 billion in audience spending at local businesses. That might include restaurants, lodging, retail, shopping, parking, that sort of thing. The total economic impact of organizational and audience spending losses is over $5 billion in lost government revenue. And of course, that is going to affect all of us in different ways. And 867,000 jobs that are no longer being supported. 35% of organizations have either laid off or furloughed staff, and 10% of the organizations nationally that have reported are not confident that they will survive the pandemic. And look at this in terms of that being a potential loss of 12,000 organizations. AFTA has also gathered data on individual creative workers. I don't have a slide for this, but just to give you a quick summary of the figures, over 27,000 creative workers have responded so far, and 95% are reporting a loss of income. 79% have experienced a decrease in creative work that would have generated income in regular times, resulting in a national total of $50.6 billion. 67% are unable to access the supplies, the resources, the space, or the people necessary for their work. And I think we've all probably experienced difficulty in receiving different services and goods during this time. And 78% have no post-pandemic financial recovery plan. And oftentimes that means that they have no funds set aside to be able to help them through that. We do have some specific data for Kentucky, though we know that the information is not complete. As of November 24th, 157 Kentucky arts and cultural nonprofits, businesses, and government entities completed the survey, reporting that 99% had canceled events. The total number of lost attendance is almost 1 million, with a total financial impact today of almost $12 million. And you can see at the bottom of this slide the major financial concerns of those Kentucky organizations that have reported. And it's critical, of course, that the information for Kentucky is as complete as possible, because we need this both for the national data and to use in Kentucky. So now, the AFTA survey is the best indicator at this time. And if your nonprofit organization hasn't filled it out yet, you can do so by going to the address on the slide and filling out the survey. It only takes about 10 to 12 minutes, and the information is critical for us to be able to report on the devastation to Kentucky's arts and cultural industry. Kentucky's potential number of survey responses should be much larger, and we know this, but because of privacy issues, Americans for the Arts isn't able to tell us which organizations or businesses have responded. So we can't reach out to them individually and ask them to please do so. Even if you have filled out the survey and you have updates, they ask that you revisit it to keep the data as current as possible. And of course, creative workers, please fill out the information for your own work and business as well. So that gives us a little bit of context for the devastation to the arts community as a result of the pandemic. But what else is happening? A healthy and vital arts and cultural economy is supported several ways, including earned revenue, private support, and government support. Earned revenue and private support have greatly diminished, but what about government support? In Kentucky, state government support for the arts has been reduced significantly over the past several years. This has affected many agencies and organizations that receive direct funding through the state budget, and perhaps most dramatically, it's affected the Kentucky Arts Council. The support the agency provides comes in many forms: resources, training, promotion, marketing opportunities and avenues, and funding for communities, artists, creative workers, organizations, and schools, and much more. Beginning in 2008, when the national recession hit, and continuing through the current fiscal year, the Kentucky Arts Council allocation in the state budget has been reduced $2,419,900, or a whopping 59%, with the most dramatic reduction coming 2 years ago in fiscal year 19. And you can see that here, over $1 million. What you don't see on this chart are the additional mid-year reduction directives that have occurred several times in 2008 and since then. Generally, those have been a result of a budget reduction that's happened across the board for most agencies. So the Kentucky Arts Council was not signaled out at that time, but again, it meant an increased reduction, and that's not shown here. And there have also been increased mandatory personnel costs. So for example, in fiscal year 19 and fiscal year 20, you see that information, the budget looks the same, but there were increased costs due to personnel implications in fiscal year 20. And I don't mean more staff were added, actually staff have had to be reduced because of that. So what does that mean? At the time, when Kentucky's arts organizations, businesses, arts educators, artists, and creative workers have been devastated by the pandemic, and most of them need the funding and services the Arts Council could provide, the funding level of the agency is the lowest it's been in over 2 decades. And that doesn't even take into an account an adjustment for cost of living increases. So these have affected the arts community across the entire state as a result of the Arts Council's diminished capacity to provide the formal level of services, funding, and opportunities. So this is a snapshot of the financial landscape for the arts and culture in Kentucky today. How do we advocate for support for the arts, and what does that mean? The most important way to be an advocate, to be an effective advocate for the arts, is to be informed. You need to be informed about policies, funding, needs, any other issues that may relate either directly or indirectly to the arts and cultural infrastructure. This means having a basic knowledge of what's going on in your community and the state, as well as those things specific to the arts. Stay informed, read newsletters and advocacy alerts carefully. Know both sides of the issue. Start early. Pay attention to issues and proposals early in the process. Watch as they change, and you'll have a better chance of affecting the outcome. There are a lot of resources available to help you stay informed. Kentuckians for the Arts shares information and provides support from Kentucky for national advocacy efforts. We produce a monthly newsletter that you can access through the Facebook page, and a website that also includes other resources. You can become a paid member or can access many of the resources for free. Americans for the Arts is the national arts advocacy organization, and anybody can become a member. Individual memberships begin at $30, and there are also memberships for organizations. You can join different member listservs depending on your interests. For instance, public art. There's a state arts advocacy network. There are United Arts Funds, local arts organization network, lots of different things. They offer webinars and training on a variety of topics, and the website is full of all kinds of resources. If you're not able to become a paid member at this time for Americans for the Arts, sign up to join the Arts Action Fund. This membership is free, and members receive breaking news and legislative alerts from their e-advocacy center, and they also get quarterly updates through Arts Action e-news. And occasionally, Americans for the Arts will send out special requests for information or notifications of reports that they have put together or accessed from other places. They are currently working with the federal budget to try to encourage increased assistance for job recovery and other recovery due to the COVID pandemic. Both AFTA and Kentuckians for the Arts provide action alerts via news, via Facebook or email to let constituents know when there's an issue that needs immediate advocacy action. They will let you know exactly what you need to do. How to go about it. Usually it is a form that you can fill out and send to your congressional delegation. AFTA deals with national concerns. Kentuckians for the Arts deals with state concerns, but also gives you information on the national outlook. In addition to following funding and policy initiatives via newsletter and advocacy alerts, you can keep track of Kentucky arts-related legislation that's either been proposed or in process. And next slide, please. Thanks. This is through Bill Watch. The Kentucky Legislature and the Legislative Research Commission have a free service called Bill Watch that allows registered users the ability to track legislation during the legislative session. You can create a profile that organizes bills by subject or topic area using keywords or their set topics. It allows you to receive email notifications, if you wish, when new bills meeting your search parameters are offered or changed. And you can view the title, the legislative sponsor, that means the legislator that introduced this, the committee assignment, the text of the bill, and the most recent action. And anybody can sign up for this. You do not have to be involved in state government or involved in politics in any way. It's open to the public to sign up for. I did a search on December 7th using their set topic area, arts and crafts. And the only thing that came up was this resolution introduced and passed in the 2020 legislative session that recognized the 2020 Kentucky Census Quilt. I didn't even know that existed. Senator Morgan McGarvey was the sponsor of this resolution. And if this was active legislation, which means that it had been introduced or was in committee and hadn't been officially resolved, constituents could communicate their support of the action directly to Senator McGarvey or to their own legislators, or express their appreciation for the resolution being passed. So this is how it will look when you receive a notification from Bill Watch or when you go in and do a search. It gives you a lot of information. By signing up for Bill Watch and using a variety of keywords like art, craft, sculpture, etc., I'll know when new bills that pertain to the arts are introduced. And stay informed. This is something that you need to know about. Know when the bill's in committee, when the hearings will be held, and when who the co-sponsors are. And also make sure that other people are aware of this information as well. So how do you go about establishing relationships with elected officials and educating them about the issues? Next slide, please. Thank you. The first step, of course, is knowing who your elected officials are. We just had an election, and some positions have changed. The Kentucky Legislative Research Commission has a search function where you can type in your address and it identifies your state representative and senator. And you see here where I typed in my address, and my current representative and senator popped up. Both of these positions in my district will have new legislators. So the site doesn't yet identify the 21 new representatives and the 5 new senators who will be sworn in on January 5th, but it will after that time. And January 5th is the first day of the 2021 legislative session. And so at that time, they will be officially new legislators. If you have newly elected legislators in your district, reach out and congratulate them. Tell them how important the arts are to you and to the community. This isn't a time to ask for anything. It's just setting a positive note and beginning your relationship with them. Get to know your legislators, their primary issues and interests, and relay to them how the arts can link to and support those issues. Are they really interested in tourism and maybe not so much in the arts? Make sure they understand how the arts benefit the community and draw tourists into the area. All of these things can be connected, and you can make those connections for them. Know their personal arts history and background, their experiences, and their involvement in the arts. If you live in a small community like I do, it's easier to know what they're involved in and support, but there are other ways you can identify what's important to your legislators. For some brief overall information, you can go directly to their page on the Legislative Research Commission website. And this is the page that is currently up for Governor or Senator Julian Carroll, my senator at this time. This gives you their contact information. It includes a photo, which can help you identify them if you see them in public, though keep in mind that those that have been legislators for quite a while, they don't always update their photos. So you might be looking at one that's a little bit old. Tells you how long they've been in office and what committees they serve on. It gives you a brief bio that can help tell you if you have common interests or experiences. Are they associated with a service or a professional organization that you're connected with? Is their regular profession outside of their legislative role something you're particularly familiar with? Most legislators have e-newsletters. You can sign up to receive these and stay in touch with the issues and concerns that are most important to them. If you use Facebook, friend them. If you use Twitter, Instagram, or other social media, sign up to receive their communications so you know what's going on with them. Kentuckians for the Arts conducted an arts survey for the 2020 Kentucky legislative candidates. Next slide, please. Thank you. The results are posted on the Kentuckians for the Arts website at the address shown on the slide, and the responses are sorted by House and Senate and then arranged in district order, and you can see what that looks like on the website. Not all of those who responded, of course, were elected, but for those that were, you can take a look at their statements regarding the arts. And let's take a look at the information we can gather from the responses on this page. We can see that all 4 of these recently elected candidates shown have 1 or more arts organizations that they frequent. Adrian Southworth was self-employed in the arts and would love to hear more about what you are working on. See how I can help move the needle at that state level. That is definitely something we'll mention in the letter of congratulations we send to her as a newly elected legislator. She is the new senator for my district, and that is definitely something I will bring up. We can see that Chris Freeland's daughter was involved in community theater. She now currently works in theater. Newly elected Sean McPherson feels it's very important that Kentucky youth are exposed to the arts in any form possible. These are all excellent conversation starters that can be used during a meeting, or you can mention in a letter. They're not only indicators that the legislators have an existing connection to the arts, but if you mention these things, it is an indicator that you took the time and the interest to find out more about them. Excuse me, and that's very important to establish that connection. And the most important thing is to create the relationship and the ongoing line of communication. And that ends our slides. So talking about establishing ongoing communications, what is the best way to do this? Establishing relationships and being involved in advocacy is a year-round proposition. It's not just about asking for something. The best time to establish the relationship with an elected official is before you have a request. They are so busy and they have so many issues to learn about and understand. You can play a very important role in helping educate them about the arts. Elected officials are most interested in hearing from their own constituents. The local point of view about what benefits their community and constituents is key. Remember that phrase, all politics are local. Keep in mind that if you're not sure that they have a connection to the arts, simply using the word art when you're talking to them might be confusing or off-putting. Much of the general public associate that with visual art only, and some think the arts are for white, older people with money, and that maybe it doesn't pertain to them. They will want to know why this matters to their constituents too. As you build your relationship with elected officials, describe the art. Is it a local choir, a festival showcasing artists and goods, a demonstration or exhibit of a craft or local tradition? And explain to them that the arts and artists create the places where we want to be. They create those communities that are vital. Make sure they know about the arts activities, events, and issues in the community. Invite them to events, and there will be events again. We all know that. Make sure that they're on your mailing list, your PR list, your VIP list. Ask them to present an award or give a curtain speech, to speak at dedications or community celebrations. Invite them to perform a walk-on role for a performance or a holiday or fundraising show, and to attend celebratory gatherings, including opening nights, any pre or post publicity events or shows, previews, openings, exhibits, displays. If they do attend, be sure to publicly acknowledge their presence and to thank them for their support of the arts. And remember, support doesn't always mean money. If they're attending an event or activity in their community, they'll likely see friends and constituents and recognize that the arts are important to and supported by the constituents in their community. Take photos of your elected officials attending events and post those on Facebook or send them to your local paper. And make sure you send a copy of the photo to them along with a thank you for participating. Invite them to tour your facility and educate them about your programs and how they benefit the community. If you have an artist in residence program going on at the school, invite them to come in and observe the classroom. Let them know what's going on. Let them know how it benefits the community or certain segments of the community. If you're an individual artist, invite them to attend an exhibit, a performance, a show, and make sure they understand that this is how you make your living, or this is a very important part of your income. If you've received an award, a special opportunity, a grant, anything like that, send them a message and let them know about it. Legislators like to be aware of what's happening in their community and with their constituents. I've had several legislators in the past that have mentioned specific artists in their community because those artists have reached out to them, let them know what they're doing, let them know the kind of artwork that they do, and just make them aware of what's going on. Legislators like to be able to make that connection. If they are talking to somebody involved with the arts, they like to be able to single out a name or an organization that they're familiar with. So that's important. Invite them to write a column for your newsletter. This will cause them to focus on your activity or your organization, thereby becoming better informed. Maybe you have to ghostwrite for them. That's okay. Or help them write it. That's okay. You know, the idea is to get them to speak out in support of the arts and let them know what's going on and establishing that relationship. If you're applying for funding or a special opportunity and it would be appropriate, ask for a letter of support from your elected officials. Then if you are selected for that opportunity or you receive the funding, write them a letter of thanks, again, for their letter of support, and let them know that it was acknowledged and you received the special opportunity that you were looking for. If you're selected for an opportunity provided by state funding, maybe it's an award, maybe it's acceptance into an adjudicated program, write them a letter of thanks and let them know how much the opportunity means to them. Never forget that the legislators play the major role in determining the state budget. If you represent an organization, inform your constituency too, that your event or your facility was made possible in part through public funds, and encourage your constituents, audiences, patrons, volunteers, students, etc., to send thank you notes to elected officials. If you receive funding from, of course, the Kentucky Arts Council, there's a requirement that you include a statement and the logo in your printed materials. This is very important. It makes sure that they understand that the organization or the entity may be presenting the event, but it is due in part to state funding that comes through the Kentucky Arts Council. If you don't receive a grant, or you receive a grant that's much lower than requested due to a lack of available funds, write your elected officials about that. Let them know and request that they increase public investment in arts and culture so that initiatives or programs like yours can be funded in the future. Stay positive, but let them know that what you would have been able to do for your community had you received the funds. When conditions allow it, set up a meeting with your legislators. They may be willing to do this in your home district when the legislature is not in session, depending on their schedule. Offer to provide assistance if they're interested in finding out more about the arts in your community and the importance of arts education. You can take a group of others with you and you can all talk about various items, but it's important to do that. Much of the information today talks about and deals with state elected officials, specifically legislators, but the same methods apply to your local elected officials, such as your mayor and your city council, Kentucky's federal legislative delegation. So when you want to begin establishing a relationship with your elected officials, you know who they are, you know a little bit about them, or you're perhaps ready to make a request about a policy or funding issue, it's important to keep the following things in mind. A face-to-face meeting is always most effective, and that can be followed by a letter or an email. Try not to use a form letter. These tend to not be read for details or specifics, but are counted for the numbers. Of course, sometimes a form letter is provided to you as a way to make fast contact or just to give you an idea of what to say. You can change these letters. The important thing is just to make that communication and give the details. Emails and phone calls, of course, can also be used. And even if you can't get through to a legislator personally about a certain issue, leave a specific message for the staff. These messages will always be given to the legislator, and it's a good idea for the staff to know too how many constituents are contacting them about a certain issue or policy. Generally, if you obtain a legislator's email from the Legislative Research Commission site that we showed you earlier on the slide, you'll do a form submittal. So if your legislator provides their direct email address to you, hang on to it. It enables you to bypass the form and they may receive it faster. Also, if you maybe have established that communication and they give you an alternate email address, sometimes they will be be willing to give you their personal email address. Feel free to use it if they give it to you. It'll help you get through to them. Several years ago, the National Assembly for State Arts Agencies presented a formula for sending emails to decision makers, and this has always stuck with me. It's the 3-30-3-30 rule, and that advises that the message line of an email takes no more than 3 seconds to read. The text of the email should take no more than 30 seconds to read, and it should be action-oriented. If you send a one-page issue brief, it should be included as an attachment, and it should take no more than 3 minutes to read. And if you send a policy paper, that might go to staff instead of the legislator, and that should take no more than 30 minutes to read. And again, it's important to include the staff. Support staff will likely help you set up a meeting or perhaps a phone call. Remember their name and thank them for their help. If you're establishing a relationship with an elected official, you'll come in contact with them again, and you'll want their experience with you to be positive. Oftentimes, too, a legislator will count on their staff members to help them stay up to date on issues, to help them remember details about certain things. And so that's very important for you to establish the connection with the staff members in addition to the legislator. Remember that elected officials have very limited time. Don't be late for your scheduled meeting, or you might miss the opportunity to meet with them altogether. And don't overstay your allotted appointment. Usually this won't be an issue because they won't allow you to. They will very politely, escort you to the door and tell you, thank you for coming, but you want to make sure that they don't have to do that. Be courteous and be confident about what you're saying to them. Don't present the issue in partisan terms. The arts should be and are nonpartisan. They should not belong to a certain party. Sometimes people tend to separate them out in partisan terms, but don't do this. That's not what the arts are about. Be concise. State your position simply and clearly. Be specific. What do you want the legislator to do? Is it to draft legislation? Is it to propose an amendment, vote for a bill? For instance, if you're interested in increased or enhanced arts education in your local school, don't just say you want more support. Say, can you increase the dollars for arts education by X amount? Or can you add one more arts educator? Use accurate data and state your source. This is important. For example, rural policy makers are often interested in USDA data. This is something that's important in Kentucky. Provide personal stories along with the data. This puts the issue in human terms, and try to remember, don't use data without a story, don't use numbers without a story, don't use a story without numbers. Those need to go hand in hand. Be honest, don't exaggerate, and if you're not sure of the answer to a question, offer to find out the information and get back to them. This gives you the opportunity to make another contact. Remember that all issues have at least two sides, and be honest about admitting the pros and cons of your issue. Listen, what's their point of view? What are their concerns? Don't argue, don't indicate that they will lose your future vote if they don't take the action that you're requesting, and don't remind them that they work for you or that their tax tax dollars support their salary. This is an immediate turnoff, not just for legislators, but for people who work in government as well. Simply provide the facts and ask them to consider your viewpoint. Thank your legislator and their staff as you leave or as you complete the phone call, and follow up with a thank you note or an email. Don't give up. You may not get the message through that you went to the first time. You may not get the action that you're looking for, but be positive, be patient, and be persistent. Timing's everything, particularly right now. Some final critical things to remember. Legislators want specifics. They like to see a demonstration of sector solidarity and constituent understanding of current events in the local landscape is paramount. Follow the news from advocacy organizations to understand the current policy positions and any funding requests that are being discussed. If constituents are asking for different versions of support for the same issue, it weakens the case. For example, if one segment is asking for major changes to a bill, another segment is asking that a bill not go forward at all, still another segment is asking for different changes, it shows a lack of sector solidarity and it's confusing to the elected official. Timing is everything. Requests that might have been relevant 2 years ago might not be appropriate at this time. The state and many local budgets are in distress right now. It's not the time to ask for major increases in funding or support for a new initiative that will necessitate increased funding. For example, the idea of state percent for art legislation has come up many times over the years. Perhaps at some point this will become a possibility, but the 2021 legislative session would probably be the worst time possible for this to be suggested. Framing the arts as essential to recovery is key. A main concern right now is jobs. Use the data that we discussed earlier to talk about the number of jobs that are dependent upon the arts or that benefit from a thriving and accessible arts infrastructure. Explain how important the arts are to the economic, social, and personal well-being of the community, and how important it is to invest in the arts to capture the benefits. According to a 2018 report by Americans for the Arts, every visit to an arts event generates $31.47 per person beyond the ticket cost in spending on meals, retail, parking, and lodging. This is income brought to local merchants. It energizes downtown and it pays salary and wages in non-arts sector. And of course, a portion of that is subject to tax revenue. So it benefits not only individual vendors or merchants in the community, it benefits the community as the whole. There are so many unknowns right now, it might seem difficult to even think about making an ask for funding for the arts. However, asking at the state level that the current funding level be maintained and explaining why that's important strikes the right note at this time and demonstrates that you understand how limited the current resources are and the extraordinary demands upon those resources. And also all of the demands from different places that your legislators are having to respond to and face. It's difficult for them, and they know it's difficult for their constituents, and they do want to do as much as possible. I think Illinois has framed this for this year in a very succinct, easy to remember message: holding harmless the Arts Council budget. So therefore, maintaining current funding. Don't do something that will hurt the arts, and don't single out the arts to receive a higher cut than other things. If you notice on the slide I showed earlier about the legislative candidate responses, one of those candidates who did win the election noted that the arts are often singled out first, and this does happen. Remember that advocacy is a continuous process based on voicing your support establishing relationships, and providing education based on personal stories and data. The relationships that are being built right now can have a major influence in the future because, as our governor says, we will get through this together, things will be better, and establishing the relationships right now will set the stage for future positive action. Thanks. So Emily, I think we have time, I think, for questions if there are any.
Yes, so throughout the webinar, I have put a whole bunch of things into the chat. And so now would be the time, if you have any questions, to pop those into the chat. I'm going back through to make sure I haven't missed any. There was one thing I would like for you to address, though, Lori, is lots of times at the state level, we get asked about what is the agency doing to advocate for itself?
Okay, great.
Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, this is a really important thing. The agency cannot advocate for itself. It's very important to remember that if you are a state agency, if you work for a state agency, you cannot advocate. Now, with one caveat, and that being the Kentucky Arts Council can advocate for funding for the National Endowment for the Arts. They can advocate on a national level, but they cannot advocate on the state level. So I know sometimes people think it's frustrating. It doesn't look that like the agency is doing anything specific, but it's because they can't. The board of the Kentucky Arts Council is able to advocate for the arts. The staff is not. So that is true of most state agencies. The staff can provide information for you, and that's very important. If there are specific statistics that you want about the arts in Kentucky, the arts infrastructure, the creative industry, the Arts Council keeps a world of data and statistics, and they are able to provide that to you. You know, you simply ask them. Some of that is on their website. You can look it up, and some of it is a call to your staff at your state arts agency. If you have a meeting coming up with a specific legislator, with somebody from your district, of course, you can contact the Arts Council and you can ask them whether or not they have provided funding through a grant or something like that in that district. You can also find out whether there have been programs provided to that district, whether constituents in that district are involved in an adjudicated program, something like that. But do give them time to be able to find out the information and to access it. Like most offices and businesses right now, the staff is not they are working full-time, but they are not in the office full-time. And it does take time to look up that information.
Okay, we've had a couple of questions come in. One of them I am actually going to answer. Someone asked about Arts Day this year. And as most people on this webinar know, we have an Arts Day in the Capitol every year, usually in January or February. And the question was, are we having a virtual day this year? The person has found that Arts Day is an important and engaging moment for arts advocacy and has been shrinking the past several years, which is true, likely due to KAC budget decreases. That's also true. Is there anything we can do moving forward to support this day? Well, I am happy to share with you that this year the day has been turned into a week. We don't have all of the information yet because it's still in the planning stages, but what I can tell you is the last week of February, the last full week of February, which begins on February 22nd, 2021, will be Arts Week in Kentucky. And every day that week we'll have a different theme that we will be discussing. We will be having lots of virtual content, just like this webinar and all of the other webinars in the Summit series that we've done so far. We'll be producing something every day, and we will also be hosting opportunities for arts stakeholders, artists, arts organizations, others to have conversations with one another in a virtual setting. So stay tuned to the Kentucky Arts Council's website for more information about that. Because we're super excited about it. It's going to be a great week, and there's going to be lots of ways for people to be involved. Now, let me hop back up here to a couple of questions that we had coming into the chat. Okay. Can you reiterate, Lori, the specific ask? Is there a specific ask that should be made this year? And then is there an organization that is articulating that ask for local arts organizations? Can you address that?
Yes, at this particular point in time, the specific ask would be to maintain the current funding. Now, once, this is a strange year because ordinarily the budget is a biennial budget. There may be some changes. The legislature had to move very quickly last year because of the pandemic. There may be some changes in the budget for this year, which wouldn't ordinarily happen in the short session. But it's important to maintain that current funding. Nobody knows what's going to happen. As we get into the legislative session, if there are changes, if things come up, if there's an indication that there may be a reduction in funding, then that information will be relayed. Watch information from Kentuckians for the Arts. I mentioned at the beginning of this that there would be advocacy alerts that come out, and you'll be able to find out that information that way.
Right. And I know Kentuckians for the Arts is extremely active on Facebook. So if you're not a member of the Kentuckians for the Arts Facebook page, I would suggest that you go do that now or right as soon as this webinar ends.
Excellent.
So someone asked a question, can you discuss the potential value of developing a legislative arts caucus? I know this is something that has been discussed many times over the years. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Absolutely. Arts caucuses are extremely valuable. There has never been one in Kentucky. There are lots of caucuses for other things. It's not something you can do just right off the bat. One of the things that is extremely important right now is to establish those relationships and get more legislators speaking up for the value of the arts. To go in and initially try to encourage legislators to form a caucus without building that framework would probably not be very successful. But by working on that bit by bit, and then what you want to do is you want to find legislators who you can have an individual conversation with and who will support that idea. And legislators on both sides of the aisle, which means, of course, both political parties. You don't want to, work on just one side. You want it to be both sides. But yes, that would be a very important and a very valuable thing to do. It's taking the steps to work up to that.
So I know that people have different understandings of how the legislature works. And one thing that I just wanted to point out is that the session that's coming up wouldn't normally be a budget year. It's going to be a budget year because of the pandemic and because the legislature, which would normally have set its budget for 2 years during this year's legislative session, only passed a 1-year budget due to the pandemic. So two things that are going to be different this year. Of course, it's the short session and it's turning into a budget session. So I think that what I have shared with a lot of folks is how important it will be to stay abreast of what's actually happening in the session, because there will likely be a lot of activity in a short amount of time.
Right.
Additionally, to that end, that it's not a budget year, one thing that I know a lot of folks who have had financial difficulties due to the pandemic may be considering our requests for line item funding. And so, of course, at the Arts Council, we don't think that's a great idea. And it actually hurts our budget. And I wonder if you could talk about that a little bit.
Absolutely. One of the things about line item funding is that money has to come from somewhere. So there are times when certain things have come up and it has been recommended that it would be something good to have happen. But there is a strong possibility that if there was a specific line item request made in the arts, that money would be taken from the Kentucky Arts Council budget. There was an instance several years ago where some very well-meaning individuals thought that they would like to advocate, without coming to the Kentucky Arts Council and discussing it, that they would like to advocate for a specific initiative. And they were able to find a legislative sponsor. That initiative was put forward, and the exact amount of money that was requested was subtracted from the proposed budget amount for the Kentucky Arts Council. Now, we were able to reverse this in time, but that is always a danger. The Arts Council is the state arts agency, and they work across the state. There are, of course, other organizations, other agencies that support the arts in state government, such as the Kentucky Artisan Center, the Governor's School for the Arts, the Kentucky Performing Arts Center, things like that. But right. Yeah, line item funding is not generally the best thing to do.
Yeah. Okay, great. Well, we have reached our allotted time. And so a couple of people had asked about the 3:30 rule that Lori had mentioned. She actually just dropped an explanation of that into the chat if you want to grab that. And if you don't have time to grab it, I will of course have that. And if you would like to get a copy of it, I can email it to you. Just contact me after this. So yes. Request, can we send the chat links and the chat history via email to attendees? Yes, I can send you all of the links that were included today to everyone who has registered and attended today's webinar. Lori, any parting thoughts?
Yeah, actually, one thing I would like to mention, we talked about this session, what will happen in this session. Keep in mind that all of the work that's being done right now is a building block for the 2022 legislative session, which is a full budget year. That is the time that there can be an ask for a possible increase, other things like that. It's a building block. But if you wait until 2022, it's too late. We're leading up to it. Now is the time to start establishing those relationships.
Great. Thank you. And so everyone knows, during Arts Week, Kentuckians for the Arts will be one of the sponsors of Arts Week, and there will actually be an advocacy day where we will have more time to dive deeper into the advocacy conversation, and hopefully help folks make some plans to make advocacy a year-round activity. So thank you so much for attending today and joining us for this extremely important conversation. It's probably more important now than it ever has been. Keep your eye on what's going on in the news. And also, if you have any questions or want to have further conversations about advocacy, please feel free to contact me at the Kentucky Arts Council. My email address is emilyb.moses@ky.gov. You will also receive that in your follow-up email that I'm going to send to everybody. Thanks again for tuning in today, and we hope to see you soon. Thanks, Lori.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.